that tie to our Thanks, Becca, to our state budget process. So the first is the urgent need to invest in additional SNAP caseworkers at the Department of Transitional Assistance, the state agency that administers SNAP here in Massachusetts, the federal food and nutrition program that connects 1 in 6 residents to dollars to put groceries on the table. The governor's recent supplemental budget for this current fiscal year that we're in seeks to level fund the existing number of SNAP caseworkers, and the same is true for her proposed FY27 budget. We'll start with the ask and then get into sort of why this is so paramount right now. The ask is approximately 200 additional workers to get workloads back to where they were at before the pandemic. We think this would cost approximately about $30 million a year for a full year. So that's about 7 million for the remainder of this fiscal year. Why is this so paramount and critical right now in Massachusetts? So for a couple of reasons. First, HR 1, the federal budget reconciliation bill passed by President Trump and Republicans in Congress, that bill dumps a ton more work onto the state. Overworked and inaccessible staff risk incorrectly terminating thousands of people, and that overwork harms accuracy and administration of the program. Massachusetts also has a SNAP gap of about 440,000 people, 44% of whom are children. We cannot close participation gaps and make sure that all eligible families are connected to this program unless we have a greater number of workers to serve families across the state. All right, next slide, Becca. To illustrate these concerns, we wanted to just show a couple of high-level points about what's happening with the health of the SNAP system in Massachusetts. The first is that our caseload has been declining for the past 18 months, fundamentally at odds with our state's economy, the demand on the emergency food network across the state on food pantries and the food bank system, and at odds with the barriers and economic challenges that we know families with low incomes continue to face in communities across the Commonwealth. The decline in the state of Massachusetts is 2 times the national average, and we're extremely distressed that the decline is largely driven by significant access barriers because of that understaffing. Next slide, Becca. This chart just shows the sheer extent of the overwork per caseworker at DTA. The bottom line of these numbers is that each worker who administers the program in Massachusetts is currently responsible for approximately 50% more work than they were before the pandemic. This isn't sustainable and isn't the model that we need to harness the power of SNAP in the state. Next slide, Becca. We also wanted to highlight when we say families are facing unprecedented barriers to access, what do we mean? We mean that in the entire history of the modern SNAP program in Massachusetts, when the statewide phone system was created just over a decade ago, the percent of calls who cannot get through to reach a SNAP worker who are hung up on because of insufficient staffing and insufficient infrastructure to support the needs of families, that percent has been higher for the past year than it has ever been before. In 2025, an average of 68% of calls trying to reach a worker for help were blocked by DTA because there was not enough staff to meet the need and to help folks across the state. All right, next slide, Becca. And I want to pivot from this piece of urgency around investment in staffing to the second area of urgency tied to SNAP, and that is work in Massachusetts to mitigate the harms of OB3 by providing state SNAP benefits for the approximately 10,000 residents who will lose SNAP over time, largely refugees, asylees, victims of trafficking due to HR 1's cuts in eligibility. The slides have a link to the Feeding Our Neighbors website and a fact sheet. And with that, Becca, I'll turn things back to you.
Thanks, Vicki. Next up, we have Celica from Project Bread.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Celica Bolga Medina, and I'm Director of Government Affairs here at Project Bread. And we're a statewide organization that focuses on connecting Massachusetts residents to federal nutrition programs and increasing access to those programs. For this fiscal year, we are strongly advocating for school meals for all, the food source hotline, and the child nutrition outreach program. As you can see on the slide, the key components of each program are here on this slide. So I'd really like to highlight how these three programs will help provide stability for households facing hunger, specifically as they face uncertainty and new barriers to assistance due to the federal policy changes to SNAP, resulting from the OB3 bill that was passed this past summer. With School Meals for All, as you can see, it provides free breakfast and lunch to all K-12 students, regardless of their income. Um, and as you can see, the benefits are there on the slide. But a key component of this program is that the program can actually save families up to $1,500 per school-age child annually. As you can imagine, for families facing hunger, that's a huge savings. But generally speaking, it helps relieve some financial pressure on families, and it allows them to redirect those resources towards other household essentials, whether that's housing or school clothes, food, whatever. Um, and this is especially meaningful as the cost of living continues to skyrocket, and some folks struggle to access SNAP or access other programs, again, due to the federal changes to SNAP. The next program is the Food Source Hotline. Project Bread is a contracted partner with the Department of Transitional Assistance to run the state's only confidential toll-free call center that connects Massachusetts residents to food resources, whether that's federal programs like SNAP and WIC or immediate direct food resources right in their communities like pantries and soup kitchens and things of that nature. The Food Source Hotline plays a critical role in relieving pressure on state systems by fielding questions, pre-screening folks for SNAP eligibility, and offering multilingual support that many state agencies just can't provide directly. Our hotline can support folks in up to 180 languages. And again, it's completely confidential, and folks can either call or text toll free to get support that they need. The role that the hotline plays in our state and in our state's anti-hunger ecosystem is critical. And that role was highlighted during the federal government shutdown in October, November. During that time, our hotline saw over 5 times as many people contacting the hotline per hour of our operating hours. Needless to say, during that time, folks were confused and scared and trying to figure out what benefits they had, what benefits they might lose, and what they could do to support themselves and help feed their families. Just to put things in perspective, that increase is actually an over 400% increase compared to last year. So the hotline serves as a frontline response to the federal landscape we're in. And the Child Nutrition Outreach Program helps ensure school districts and community organizations have the tools, training, and support that they need to maximize participation in school meals and the Summer Eats program. And generally speaking, all three of these programs are just key investments in programs that we know work and support folks in securing food assistance that they need. And these programs would be critically important to supporting folks as the federal landscape grows more complex and unpredictable. Thank you.
Thanks, Celica. Next up, we have Catherine from the Greater Boston Food Bank. And just a quick note, I know that some folks are having difficulty joining the Zoom. In case any of your colleagues had trouble, just please let them know, if you're in touch with them, that we have increased the Zoom capacity, so they should be able to join now. Catherine.
Thanks, Becca, and thanks everybody for being here today. Awesome to be on this call with so many folks interested in fighting hunger. So Catherine Alexander with the Greater Boston Food Bank. For those of you who don't know, we are the Eastern Massachusetts Food Bank that has 600 community partners throughout our region, distributing last year 145 million pounds of food, which is about 121 million meals last year. So, we're on the front lines of the emergency food system. We work in collaboration with 3 other food banks throughout Massachusetts, Western Mass, Worcester County, and Merrimack Valley. And the 4 of us make up the Food Bank Coalition of Massachusetts, and spearhead advocacy and around what is called the Massachusetts Emergency Food Program, Massachusetts Emergency Food Assistance Program, MEFAP. It's where MUFAP has been in existence for 31 years. Last year, we celebrated 30 years of MUFAP, and it's this amazing emergency food purchasing program that allows food banks to buy and distribute food to our neighbors in need. Our ask this year is for $58 million for the MUFAP program. We had a exciting development in the governor's budget, which was a $5 million increase from last year, but bringing us up to $55 million, but we're pushing for 58. Yeah, it is a great achievement. The reason this is so critical right now is because of all of the federal cuts that we've just been discussing. As more folks, unfortunately, lose access to things like SNAP, they're going to be coming to our neighborhood food pantries and meal programs and are going to be needing that additional assistance. So, we think of MUFAP as sort of the first line of defense for a hungry family, and that's why we need this, especially now, this critical increase. So that's our ask, and we have on the GBFB website a link to contact your legislator to ask leadership for $58 million in the House budget. And then secondarily, GBFB plays a critical role in the Hunger Free Campus Initiative. We're asking for $3 million in the House budget. Excitingly, the governor did include this line item for the first time in her budget at $500,000, which is what it was at last year. But we know that that amount just scratches the surface of need for our students on university or college campuses throughout the state. So, we are working in a coalition to bring that total up to $3 million. So this is, again, emergency food assistance on our college campuses throughout the state. So please join us in advocating, and thanks so much, Becca.
Thanks, Catherine. Next up, Laura Sylvester from the Food Bank of Western Mass.
Hi, everyone. Laura Sylvester. Like Becca said, I'm with the Food Bank of Western Mass. And like Catherine said, we are one of the 4 food banks in Massachusetts, and we cover the western third of the state, the 4 westernmost counties. We serve about 135,000 people a month, and we have 250 partner sites, pantries, brown bags for seniors, mobile food banks, etc. And I'm here today to talk about the Bridge to Prosperity Cliff pilot. This is a first of its kind pilot in Massachusetts. It was initially passed in 2022 in the Economic Development Bond Bill in late December. And we just last year enrolled our first cohort of 18 people. So it's been about a year since those first 18 people have been enrolled. This is a pilot that helps people who are facing the cliff effect. The cliff effect is for workers who are lower wage workers, and they still qualify for benefits like SNAP or transportation or childcare, housing assistance. And if they take a job that gives them a little bit of a raise, or they get a job that pays more, it makes them lose their benefits because they just earn over the threshold. And it really is a huge problem. I'm sure even if you don't know the term cliff effect, you know people who have been impacted by this. And it really keeps people trapped in a cycle of low wage work and then they can't get out of it. So this pilot is built for 100 people, split in 3 locations: the Springfield area, the Worcester area, and the Greater Boston area. Gives them bridge payments each month to make up for the loss of any benefits as they train for higher wage jobs. It also gives them one-to-one financial and career coaching. And after the completion of the 2-year pilot, they get a bonus of up to $10,000 free and clear to just do whatever they want with. Originally, when this bill was passed, the legislature gave us $1 million to start it with, which was great. The pilot itself really needs about $5.5 million to run as intended. We've gotten $500,000 in each of the last 2 years' budgets. And this year we're asking for $550,000 because in the interim, we've also grant raised and fundraised $3.9 million in private funding. So the state has given us $1.2 million in funding. We've raised 3.9, and so the gap remaining that's needed is $550,000. And so we're hoping that you will all help us prioritize that because we really want to prove with this pilot that this is a permanent solution that can be rolled out throughout the state. If you help people support them as they come off of benefits and are earning more money, you can really turn people into high wage, self-supporting income earners and really decrease the amount of public benefits that we give out in the state. And obviously we are very supportive of all these other issues that are being spoken about today. We work really closely with everybody here, and that is it. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Next up, we have Omi from the Mass Public Health Alliance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Omi Amar Singham, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Massachusetts Public Health Alliance. We are a statewide nonprofit advocacy organization, and we advocate on all things public health, including the food system, because you can't be healthy if you don't have access to healthy and nutritious food. I'm going to be talking about the Mass Food Trust program and some of our advocacy on transportation access. To start, we support many of the priorities that are already named, and we also always push for funding in the state budget for the Massachusetts Food Trust program. This is a program that was created in 2018, and it's a public-private partnership that helps retailers all across the state enter the business market in order to be able to sell healthy, fresh food. It's a direct response to lack of grocery stores in a lot of neighborhoods and Stop and Shop and other big grocery stores closing, and to make sure that everyone has access to healthy food very close to where they live, which, you know, in a time like this, with a snowstorm like this, you can understand that being able to walk to your neighborhood corner store and be able to buy a tomato is a really important thing. So this is a program that gets some funding from the state, and it leverages that funding with private funding to be able to give out low interest loans and grants to small businesses that otherwise would have a barrier to entry to open a business or to, you know, buy a refrigerator, for example, in order to be able to store produce and sell that to the neighborhood. The program gets about $300,000 usually out of the state budget to help their operating costs. And we are also pushing this year for them to get a $10 million bond authorization in the environmental bond bill. This is a program that not only expands food access all across the state, but it also supports small business. It supports local agriculture because the program prioritizes businesses that will purchase from local farmers. And most of the businesses that have been opened by women and people of color, and they primarily employ people from the neighborhood as well. So it's an economic booster wherever these programs open. The Food Trust program has been operating since 2018 with great success. They have funded 91 projects in 11 counties and have expanded food access for over 418,000 people across the state. Um, so they had a bond authorization previously for $6 million, dollars, and they were able to open all of these businesses with that funding. And now that authorization has expired. And so we are pushing for $10 million dollars in the bond bill and $300,000 in the budget. Next slide, please. MPHA also advocates for regional public transportation access because, of course, getting where you need to go is critical to health and critical to being able to access food. One thing that we saw during the pandemic was that ridership on the RTAs, the regional transit authorities that serve all of the communities outside of the MBTA service area, RTA ridership did not dip in the same way that ridership dipped on the MBTA or other public transit systems. And that is because people who ride the RTA are overwhelmingly, at the time, what we would have called essential workers, people who are low income, people of color, people with disabilities, and older adults, people who really need the RTA to get where they need to go and have few or no other options. Um, the RTAs have been able to expand service all across the state because of fair share funding that has been invested in the RTAs over the last few years. And so we are pushing to maintain and increase that funding from fair share dollars. This year, we're asking for 280 million. That money gets distributed across all 15 RTAs, so it is still far below what gets spent on the MBTA. And it's to sustain programs that are already in existence. So state contract assistance that has allowed all of the RTAs to start operating service on the evenings and weekends. $10 million for connectivity grant programs so that RTAs can connect people across RTA districts. And 8 million for the community transit grant program, which helps to fund on-demand service for people who have high mobility needs. And with that, I will pass it to the next person. Thanks.
All right, next up we have Simca from Mass Farm to School.
Hi, everyone. My name is Simca Horwitz. I'm a co-director at Massachusetts Farm to School. It's really great to be here with so many incredible advocates. And at Mass Farm to School, we facilitate an advocacy coalition called Massachusetts Food for Massachusetts Kids, really supportive of many of the previously mentioned budget requests, and especially those focused on the school food environment. And our focus at Massachusetts Food for Massachusetts Kids is really around maximizing equitable access to meals at school for all students, with a focus on strengthening those meals to ensure that they are using locally grown or caught foods and providing meals that are culturally connected to diverse student populations, as well as providing food education or experiential learning for students that we know really reinforces what is happening in the cafeteria and encouraging students to try those healthy local foods. So our coalition's budget request for this year is really around sustaining two very successful programs. One is the state farm to school grant program called the Mass Fresh Grant, operated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This was originally funded with COVID relief funds, and has been funded since FY23, though it's not yet codified. And our request is for level funding of the program, which is $750,000 in the FY27 budget. To date, DESE has awarded over $3 million in grants to schools and early education programs, over 110 different awards. And we know that the demand is really significant. So they've had more than 4 times the amount of requests come in that they're able to fund. This is an incredibly popular program that enables schools to not only invest in things like kitchen equipment, in school nutrition staff training to enable them to better serve students, but also things like professional development for educators and school garden bed installation, things that support more of the educational side of farm to school programming. The other budget request is $2 million for a local food incentive. So this would essentially help continue a program that was previously federally funded called Local Food for Schools, which provided K through 12 schools funds to spend on locally grown foods. This funding was terminated. And again, it was tremendously popular with schools really directing that purchasing to either direct local farm purchases or through food hubs that are aggregating from many local producers. So the request is for $2 million to try to sustain the amount of annual purchasing that schools were previously doing. They'll also expand it to an early education audience, as that's what was originally going to happen with the federal program. And we know that when students are exposed to these foods at the youngest ages, it really can help have the greatest impact for developing lifelong healthy eaters. So those are our two priority budget requests for FY27. I'll turn it back over.
Awesome. And I'll turn it next to Kelly Coleman from CISA.
Hi, thank you. Oh, working on, there we go. There we go. It's such a treat to be on the Zoom with so many great advocates, and we share in supporting many of these priorities that you've heard from. I'm going to talk a little bit about funding for buy local organizations across the state. CISA, Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture, where I work as the deputy director, is one of 9 organizations that works to support local farmers and build local markets for of local agricultural economy. We together, each organization has slightly different focuses, but all of our organizations focus on increasing consumer awareness and demand for locally grown food through public-facing outreach, marketing, and education to make sure that people know where and how to buy local food directly from our local farmers. We all engage the community to support local agriculture by doing education directly with community members and inviting the community to support policy changes and learn about the bigger issues facing local farmers and local agriculture. We provide direct technical assistance and training to farmers through workshops, consulting expertise, and farm mentors. And we work to increase access to local food through supporting the Healthy Incentives Program and working with partners on this call. So funding for the buy local efforts across the state has been in the state budget for nearly 20 years. It has been this consistent commitment from the state has really allowed each of our organizations to build a sort of steady drumbeat that encourages the community to stay engaged with local agriculture and to continue to reach out to local farmers when they're thinking about buying fresh fruits and vegetables, and meat, eggs, you name it. We've seen national research that suggests that when your community has an active buy local campaign, sort of a presence in the community and in the media, that there's more robust local sales, even in times when there's economic weakness. So when people are feeling some economic pressures, the regular reminder to be looking for local helps people make that a priority. We found that local support is essential right now, especially as local farmers are experiencing an onslaught of economic pressures through tariffs and the increasing cost of living that all of us are experiencing. Farmers are experiencing that both in their personal lives, in their personal budget, but also on the farm budget. And many of these farmers, our local farmers, run very small scale businesses and are really feeling the pinch there. So continuing to have a market for the products that they are producing, it helps them stay in business and keep growing local food for us year after year. And we also have the added challenge, which is that the USDA support from the USDA is being significantly reduced at this moment. The current administration has cut staffing that would go to support farmers and would help farmers access other resources. So we are seeing farmers in a real tight pinch and know that community and local support is going to continue to be important in this coming year. And finally, local farmers who do participate in these buy local campaigns across the state say that their participation does lead to increased revenues and sales for themselves. We've done some basic research that if every household in the state were able to shift, not increase, but like shift $5 of their purchasing towards local food, it would result in a nearly $80 million of money recirculating in the local economy, 1,500 new jobs in the state, and better health with over 250 million servings of fresh local food finding their way into people's shopping carts. We are continuing, hoping for continued funding in the state budget. Our funding for the Bible campaign is through the Massachusetts Department of Ag line item, which is 2511-0100, and we're looking for continued consistent support.
Thanks, Kelly. Next up, we have Margaret Moulton from Berkshire Grown, who will be representing the LFPA working group. If you're there, Margaret.
Sorry, I was so focused on Kelly, I forgot to unmute myself. Hi, my name is Margaret Moulton, as Becca said. I'm the executive director of Berkshire Grown, based in Great Barrington. I'm also a member of the State Food Policy Council. I hold the direct-to-consumer seat. I'm here today representing a statewide group of community nonprofits and farmers and fishermen who for 3 years have been funded through the state management program of LFPA. LFPA stands for Local Food Purchasing Assistance. They were grants with federal dollars managed by Massachusetts. Those funds did exactly what public funds should do. They served the community members who needed it most and strengthened the local economy by buying directly from farmers. LFPA was a game changer all across the state. The programs designed by more than 30 different nonprofits across the state worked with over 500 farmers and food producers from the Cape to the Berkshires, especially BIPOC and underserved farmers who are often overlooked in these kinds of programs. These funds purchased fresh food from local farmers and distributed it to food insecure families. The food included everything from fresh fruit and vegetables to milk, cheese, eggs, meat, and fish. Over those 3 years, $11.3 million went directly to purchase food from local farms. It was distributed through a myriad of creative programs that responded to the need in each community. So this was not something that was applied generically across the state. Everybody had their own program, and it was very applicable to what the needs were in each town, area, region. Those purchases, the $11.3 million, generated $19.3 million in broader economic impact. And even more important, this local food reached over 700 community sites and tens of thousands of families across Massachusetts. I want to highlight potential for the LFPA type of funding in Massachusetts for the future. Becca, if you want to go to the next slide. With continued LFPA type of funding in Massachusetts, we can rebuild reliable markets for small and medium-sized local farms, particularly underserved and BIPOC farmers. We can restore consistent access to fresh local food for families living with food insecurity. A lot of these programs are continuing on a much scaled back way. We cannot touch the level of funding that was supplied through LFPA. We can strengthen in the future Commonwealth's local food supply chain with support from the state and increase long-term resilience from disruptive federal food policy changes. When the FALFPA funding ended, the need didn't end. We're working to address that need as a group, but we can't fill the funding gap without help from the state. We'll be zeroing in on our ask in the coming week, and on Tuesday, March 5th, we'll host LFPA Lobby Day in room 437, and I invite you all to join, learn more, and leave a commitment to supporting a state-led program modeled on the profoundly impactful LFPA program. That's it.
Thanks, Margaret. All right. And finally, I promise we're almost at the end, folks. I know it's been a lot. The Mass Food System Collaborative has a number of issues that we try and support through the fiscal year budget process. Obviously, of course, the Healthy Incentives Program is one of our top asks every single year. We'll be asking for $29.7 million this year, which was included in the governor's budget proposal. Again, that's House 2 this year. And we think that'll be enough so that the program can operate year-round without a cut to the benefit levels, support an increased number of SNAP households that want to use their HIP benefit, and support more farmers being added to the program for the first time since 2022, which we've been having some conversations in the HIP Coalition. Really want to emphasize that this is really important for equitable access on the consumer side, as well as the farmer side. We'll be having a lobby day, of course, on March 26th this year in room 428 of the State House. Hope to see you then. That's a really important day for HIP, and it's, in my opinion, one of my best work days of the year. So we'll be hosting farmers and consumers again. Hope to see you then. We also advocate for the Local Food Policy Council grant program. We're asking for level funding of $250,000. That supports the work of a number of folks in this room that do really important on-the-ground coalition building, food security work, and more. We also have a level funding ask for our food literacy campaign, which supports DESE's, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's school wellness coaching program, and as well as their development of some curriculum resources that will be distributed to educators across the state. We also try and track the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources administrative line item that funds staff levels at the agency. It's really important that that at least gets level funding. No one wants a pay cut. And we think that, MDAR, there's a statewide hiring freeze, but really the state agency could use some additional staff. We also are tracking an additional issue in the fiscal year 2026 supplemental budget that the governor filed. It's House Bill 5033, if you want to look it up. She included a tax credit for farmers who donate food to hunger relief nonprofits. That is, in her proposal, capped at $5,000 per farm business. There's also a bill making its way through the legislature that's sponsored by Representative Kane that has a little bit of a different structure. That version goes up to $25,000 and is broader than just farmers. And Senator Comerford also filed a bill that's more similar to the governor's proposal. But we'll be advocating for that policy through the supplemental budget process, which may overlap with the annual fiscal year 27 budget process. So just wanted to mention it today. But we really are trying to raise the importance of the food system through these programs, broadly speaking. So wanted to just share this. This is a screenshot from a spreadsheet that I maintain. This is, I believe, all of the asks that were discussed today. My co-presenters can tell me if I've missed any, but just wanted to make it clear to you all, what line items in the budget that these programs are funded within, in case you want to look them up yourself, what they received last fiscal year, if anything, what the advocates ask is this year, and what level they were included in the governor's proposal, if they were included. And a number of programs are not necessarily included in the governor's proposal, but that isn't necessarily a case for alarm. That is, things that get included that are earmarks that don't necessarily have their own line item, but are included in a larger line item, usually get introduced by the legislature. So just wanted to make that clear, that in case you see the zeros in that column, it's not necessarily a cause for alarm. And I see a question in the chat about the lobby days, so just wanted to share the list that I'm aware of. I know Project Bread is hosting a Universal School Meals briefing tomorrow in the State House. LFPA Days, March 5th. Thank you, Jesse, for posting the RSVP link in the chat. March 11th is Agriculture Day at the State House. I know a number of folks here, including the Buy Locals, are working on that. March 12th is Hunger Free Campus Day, which Greater Boston Food Bank and the food banks and Mass Law Reform Institute are advocating for. March 26th is HIP Day, and in April, SEIU 509, which is the union that represents DTA caseworkers, will be having an advocacy day, as well as May 6th, which is Older Adult Day from the Mass Councils on Aging. Catherine, did you want to say anything? I'm sorry, I forgot FB Advocacy Day.
Yeah, no worries. It's hot off the presses. April 7th will be focused on GBFB Advocacy Day at the State House. So looking forward to sharing more with this group.
Awesome. Thank you. And sorry, I forgot to include that one. But as you can tell, it's a quite busy time of year for the legislature, as well as advocates, as the budget process really ramps up in March. I don't have the date yet, but I would also include the one public hearing that the Joint Ways and Means committee has for folks to testify at. So that's another opportunity to raise the importance of food security and food system issues to the committee that drafts and proposes the budget to the full legislative chamber. That is a fairly long hearing, so it's totally okay to do it from home, and they do offer a remote option since the pandemic, which is really important for accessibility. But one next step that I think I can speak for my co-presenters in saying is that we'd all encourage you to do is to reach out to your state representative and senator to share your own budget priorities, whether they be these programs that we spoke about today, whether they be some other programs or local funding for your organizations. Now is a really important time to reach out to your state rep and senator. They're considering the budget priorities that they are going to speak with leadership about. Each rep and senator gets a one-on-one meeting with either the House or Senate Ways and Means chairperson. And these programs are really important to raise in those meetings so that, leadership knows that it's important that they fully fund these programs in the budget the first time, and that we don't have to go through, supplemental funding campaigns as we have had to do for HIP in the past, for example. And I'm sure that, folks have a number of advocacy toolkits that we can share out with the slides afterwards. So I think that's it in terms of slides, and we wanted to make sure that we had time for questions. I will finally stop sharing my screen so I can see you all. Great. I'm just going to check the chat. Jay Harrison, the collaborative, is advocating for MDAR funding, but I know the Farm Bureau cares about this as well. Anyone want to share any questions that you might have for the folks who've presented today, or anything that you're really excited to advocate for? I'm always really excited to advocate with you all personally, but I'll try and stop talking now. So if you can use the raise your hand function, that might be easiest because there's 130 of us on this call. Jay.
I just know, not to put extra mustard on the MDAR question, but just, they've got a hiring freeze over there, I think, and there's so much of the backbone work that happens is because of them. So just wanted to make sure that we're putting that in the mix.
Thanks, Jay. And just to answer Elisa's question in the chat, supplemental budgets really move in a variety of times. They don't have a strict timeline like the annual budget process does. So, it could be any time in the next few months. But we haven't heard anything that indicates that the House Ways and Means Committee, which is where the budget gets assigned to first, is going to move immediately on that. And the slides will be shared out afterwards, just in case folks are like scribbling down notes. Please don't feel like you need to do that. They will be shared. No questions?
Hey, I just want to pat us on the back for finishing under time. This has never happened, ever.
I know, it's again the same thing, Laura. All right, so it's clear as mud to everyone. All right, I'm gonna just share this Mass Budget and Policy Center slide one more time. Again, just to center us. So we're in this arrow right here. Again, the Joint Ways and Means Committee is starting to have hearings in March on the different aspects of the governor's budget proposal. And then the budget process really ramps up once the House Ways and Means budget proposal is released. So just want to make sure that we all are understanding our timeline of March is a good time to start planning and reaching out to your state reps and senators. And in April, a number of folks in this room will be asking you to reach out to your state rep, for example, to ask them to co-sponsor a budget amendment if one is needed to support these programs during House budget debate. And that will repeat in May with senators. We'll be asking for, I believe, some likely amendments will be coming, so we'll need as many state reps and senators to co-sponsor those as possible. So just wanted to share that one more time.
Becca, could I just chime in? Oh, sorry, Omi.
Oh, I'll be quick. I was just gonna sort of re-emphasize, I think everyone on this call knows, because we know what the budget picture looks like, but this is a full court press year for budget advocacy. The budget is tight. It's not as tight, I think, as some of us were expecting to see, but a lot of programs need a lot of funding. A lot of people are in crisis, and all of the programs that we are supporting are really important and good. And there are a lot of other important programs as well. And so we really need to make sure that the legislature hears from all of us and beyond us. I think this is a group of people who are already doing this advocacy, but everyone I think needs to find two or three friends, family members to call in as well. And the timing is sort of murky if you're not in the habit of doing budget advocacy. And so, my top tip, which I hope this group especially will appreciate, is when you see the tulips coming out of the ground, it's time to call the House. And when they start to open, it's time to call the Senate. And if the tulips have died, you have missed the window. So, when you see tulips, when you're walking around, think budget.
I love that. I usually time it around like the Boston Marathon is like around whenever the House debates. So that's when I'm like, oh, got to get things done by the marathon. Vicky, thanks, Omi.
That's incredible. Thank you. I love that imagery. Just wanted to, I realized I neglected to mention at the beginning, in terms of sort of like actions that folks in different positions across community in the state could take on the investment in DTA front. So first, as I mentioned, there's the SNAP gap of about up to about 500,000 people. That's folks who are on Medicaid, and this ties Kat to your comment in the chat about like what's happening in Massachusetts and why are we not investing the way that we need to meet people's basic needs. So we know who half these 500,000 people are. They're on Mass Health. We know who they are. We know where they are. We know their eligibility. We know their income. They should be on SNAP and they're not. And we cannot get them connected to this critical food benefit they need without that investment, Kat, that you mentioned in the chat. Project Bread, MLRI, and the Make Hunger History Coalition are working on a sign-on letter from partners to elevate to the legislature in short order. This is what we need in Massachusetts because SNAP is the benchmark, the linchpin of all of the work that we're all trying to do. I know Becca says this all the time, but you can't get HIP without SNAP. And we need to make sure that all of these programs wrap around this critical federal nutrition program because none of the work that we're doing on a state level can fill the gaps from that federal withdrawal of support from the program. And so the state needs to make sure that we're investing to maximize that access across the state. So I'll stop there, but just wanted to mention that letter because it always makes me feel more optimistic to know we have like a real action to take in the near term.
Thanks, Vicky. And yeah, you can't get HIP without SNAP. It's true. And that includes state-funded SNAP. So hopefully we can, fingers crossed, get that back for folks who need it. And I see Ruth's comment in the chat about upcoming ballot initiatives, just recognizing that the collaborative is a 501c3 nonprofit. I am trying to be careful about what we say, but it is very concerning about the potential impact on revenue of some of the tax ballot questions for sure. Just trying to keep up with the chat. Sorry, folks. All right, Callie, you have a question on, is there a recommendation on how many budget priorities an organization should ask their legislators to support? Any of my co-presenters want to take this on? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I was literally just typing in the chat. I don't have a specific recommendation, but for context or if it helps, Project Bread, we typically include one, two, three. We typically include 3 to 4 priorities um, in like the main body of our letter. And then if there are other priorities that we're helping to lift up for like partners, we do those bullet style, literally one line zinger bullet style. Does that help? We're also in a unique position because we have two like programmatic ask for our organization. But generally speaking, you could probably do 3. That's not
I
very
would,
scientific.
I, this is Omi from MPHA. I mean, we are a multi-issue organization. We advocate on housing, food, transportation, public health infrastructure, environmental justice. And so our letter is very long. It has a lot of things in it. I think it's important to name everything that you care about. I mean, the legislature, Ways and Means, is looking at every single part of the budget. I mean, if you send a 10-page letter, people are probably not going to read a 10-page letter. So I think thinking about how you present it and thinking about the poor staff person on the other end who's getting all of these letters and making it easy for that person to understand what you're asking for. But I think especially in a time like this, like we don't do ourselves any favors by not saying what we think is important, because then what we hear from legislators on the other side is, well, I didn't hear anyone say anything about this. And the situation is really bad, and our legislature has done funding cuts in years where that was not necessary. And so we are digging out of a hole that we are digging out of a hole already that was not created by this federal administration, and the federal administration has obviously made those holes really big. So I think every organization has to choose what's right for them, but our at MPHA we have it's people need these services, people need this money, and so I think if you have a lot of things that you care about, it's worth naming them, whether that's all in one letter or at different times. I think it does have to be digestible, but I don't know that there's a magic number.
I think we also end up doing like a bullet point list on like the first page of our letter and then like have a lot more detail on like this second to fourth pages, I'll say. But we're also writing a number of letters to House Ways and Means right now because there are so many pieces moving, because it's the second year of a legislative session and we're trying to get things passed by July 31st, folks? Is that correct? Yeah. Anyways, we can talk about that at another briefing, but I think making sure that like your letter is digestible is what Omi was saying is really important for the staffers that get a number of letters. And I think just, following it up with like a when you're in the building, if you're in the building for one of these advocacy days, just dropping in and offering to go through that letter with the staff that you're sending it to. Anyone else have any last questions, programs that you're excited to advocate for? We have 2 minutes left.
I just wanted to, I see Brianna put something important about revenue. I think we all have to start thinking about raising revenue and where that comes from. The corporate fair share is one way. MPHA is supportive of that, and I would recommend people check that out. It would close a tax loophole on corporations and raise about $400 million a year for the state. We have seen what progressive revenue does. Fair Share has created funding for schools and food at schools and transit, and that is the only part of the budget that is not seeing cuts. And so I think it's also important for us to impress upon our state leaders that we need revenue. And I think the other side of that is it is more expensive not to fund these programs because of like the fallout that people will experience, and doing that kind of damage control is more expensive than funding these programs from the front end. And so I think that's another important point that advocates on this call can really hammer home.
Awesome. Well, I apologize for the tech difficulties at the top of the call. I had thought that I had purchased the larger Zoom meeting, but apparently hadn't. So thanks, folks, for joining who experienced a little bit of tech difficulty at the beginning. We will be sending out the recording and the slides as well, and we'll be sending out ways to join these campaigns in the notes. So thanks, everyone, for a really prompt, actually on time briefing. I think this is like the first time we've ever done this within an hour. So hats off to my co-presenters. Appreciate you all.